Welcome to your midweek Cybersecurity Executive Briefing, brought to you by Clock Tower Technology Services and the United Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brian Sulo, your virtual CISO for the next 15 minutes. My company is Clock Tower Technology Services, and we provide IT, telecom, and information security services to businesses with 10 to 100 employees. But this isn't a sales pitch, so if you want to learn more about what we do and how we do it, you could reach out anytime. Today is Wednesday, November 10th, and it's time for cybersecurity news and takeaways that you can use in your business today. I'll keep the InfoSec jargon to a minimum, but if there's anything you don't understand, please ask me to clarify, preferably at the end when we have time set aside for Q&A. Before we begin, I want to talk briefly about the Center for Internet Security's Critical Security Controls. The Center for Internet Security, or CIS, maintains a list of security controls that are considered critical practices for organizations of all sizes. The current version of this list consists of 18 categories, with 5 to 15 specific practices in each category. At Clock Tower, we use the CIS list to guide and measure our own security practices, as well as those of our security-conscious clients. The takeaways from the security stories we present on this briefing all fall into one or more of the CIS categories, so we've highlighted the relevant categories for each story. This week, for example, there are a lot that fall into the security awareness training category. On the other hand, there generally aren't many stories relevant to small businesses that relate to penetration testing. That's a function of the fact that most small businesses don't have the budget for network penetration testing unless they're in very specific industries, so we'll rarely recommend it as a general measure. We hope you find these categories a useful visual aid. Now, let's get to the news. From a report in the Hacker News, trading app Robinhood suffered a data breach on November 3rd, exposing, quote, email addresses of 5 million users, full names for a different group of about 2 million people, and additional information such as names, dates of birth, and zip codes for a limited set of 310 more users, end quote. The breach was perpetrated when a threat actor tricked a customer service representative into granting them access to internal support systems. If you use Robinhood, the obvious takeaway is to be on the lookout for scams and phishing attempts. Fortunately, the company reports that no financial information was accessed. But now that the bad guys know who you are, they will use this information to attack you directly. There's a more generic takeaway here, though. Every organization has employees who interact with the public, often people they don't know and have no prior relationship with. Such employees must be trained to detect scams and social engineering attacks. It's also important that these employees, and all employees actually, be given access only to the systems they need to perform their job duties, so they can't inadvertently give that access to a malicious actor. The Hacker News also reports of critical and high severity vulnerabilities in Cisco devices. The critical vulnerabilities are in high-end Cisco Catalyst optical network equipment, which most of our audience probably doesn't use. But there are high-severity flaws in both Cisco Small Business Series switches and Cisco email security appliances. The takeaway from this is to make sure that your network devices are running the latest firmware. To do that, you might need to make sure your network devices are still supported, and that you have a current support contract with the manufacturer. Google has patched several serious flaws in Android, including one that's being actively exploited in the wild. Because of the way Android is licensed by various device manufacturers who make their own customizations to the operating system, Android patches are not rolled out in a consistent manner or schedule. If you or your employees use Android devices, they should receive security updates soon. To reduce your risks from employee-owned smartphones and tablets, ensure they are segregated from your core network. ensure they are new enough to get the latest security updates, and ensure they are adequately protected with passwords and lockout policies. These protections can be part of your company policies and procedures, or they can be enforced through a mobile device management service, such as the one available through Microsoft 365. Speaking of smartphones, ZDNet published an article with a title that says it all. Phishing attacks are harder to spot on your smartphone. That's why hackers are using them more. Employees are generally aware of how to spot phishing attacks in email. But can they do the same when the attack comes through a text message, Facebook Messenger, or some other mobile app where display space is limited by the size of the screen and the clues might not be as easy to read? The takeaway from this article is that end users need to be trained to use the same anti-phishing techniques they use for email when it comes to mobile communication channels. Dark Reading details a new phishing campaign that, quote, spoofs Amazon's order notification page and includes a phony customer service voice number where the attackers request the victim's credit card details to correct the errant order. End quote. From the article, quote, the attack works like this. The victim receives an email showing their supposed Amazon order that totals more than $300. The victim, realizing they didn't place the order, clicks on a link in the email, which takes them to the actual Amazon website. A customer service number in the phishing email, which has an area code from South Carolina, doesn't answer when they try to call. After a few hours, the attackers call back from India, and the phony customer service rep tells the victim they need to give their credit card and CVV number in order to cancel the invoice. End quote. This is an excellent example of how an attacker uses confusion and frustration to short-circuit the victim's thought process. Meanwhile, Krebs on Security reminds us that the holiday shopping season is prime time for phishing campaigns involving wayward deliveries. A Fedex scam that is detailed in the article works like this. Quote, Louis Morton, a security professional based in Fort Worth, Texas, forwarded an SMS phishing or smishing message sent to his wife's mobile device that indicated a package couldn't be delivered. Clicking Schedule New Delivery brings up a page that requests your name, address, phone number, and date of birth. Those who click Next Step after providing that information are asked to add a payment card to cover the $2.20 redelivery fee. After clicking Pay Now, the visitor is prompted to verify their identity by providing their social security number, driver's license number, email address, and email password. End quote. Protections against this type of threat include security awareness training for end users and network-based DNS filtering. If you're not doing those two things, ask your IT support company if they can provide them for you. Another important security component that's relevant to business is to have excellent documentation and policies. Your people should know what packages are expected, from what carriers, and what tracking numbers are attached. There should be no wondering if a package delivery notification is real or not, because there should be a policy in place to always verify delivery notifications against what is expected. As auto manufacturers continue to push out new consumer-driven features that include always connected onboard computers, the attack surface for cybercrime continues to grow. A report from Dark Reading details that the most common attack types right now have to do with keyless entry in automotive applications for mobile devices, but this is really only the beginning. Mass breaches of geolocation and other identifying data are in our future. And we're going to see vehicles digitally held for ransom. How these events will affect businesses who have fleet cars or who have employees who use their personal vehicles for work remains to be seen, but it is something we need to prepare for. Threat actors are increasingly using a tactic known as SEO poisoning to increase their distribution of ransomware. If you're involved in the marketing side of your operation, you'll recognize that SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and it's the art of getting web pages to rank higher in searches for particular topics. The bad guys are using the same techniques to get malicious pages to show up at the top of the results for commonly searched topics. The takeaway for this report comes with a story. Some time ago, I was looking to refinance my house with a particular lender. I did a Google search for that lender's name, and, assuming they would be the top result, because I put in their name, clicked the first link without looking too closely. This brought me to an application page, and it wasn't until after I had entered my social security number that I thought to take a look at the URL in the address bar. It wasn't the site I was looking for. As it turns out, the site was not malicious, just devious, but the story could have had a much more troublesome ending. Knowing that malicious actors are using these same techniques means that we need to be even more cautious about trusting search engine results. This is a place where security awareness training can really pay off. I have a maxim that I've mentioned before on this briefing. Today's paranoia is tomorrow's best practice. Well, I've just coined another one. Every innovation will be exploited for criminal gain. It's not as catchy, but this next story proves it's true. Security firm Abnormal Security reports that cybercriminals are now using QR codes to deliver malicious links that bypass security scanners. The Better Business Bureau has warned of a rise in complaints about scams involving the use of QR codes. Quote, "Because the codes cannot be read by the human eye, attackers are increasingly using them to disguise malicious links," the BBB said. Attackers are distributing malicious QR codes via direct messages on social media, text messages, physical mail, paper flyers, and email, it noted. Users who scan the codes using their mobile phones are directed to phishing websites that are designed to harvest personal information and login credentials, automatically follow a malicious social media account, or launch a payment app. In addition, Bitcoin addresses are often sent via QR codes, which makes QR codes a common element in cryptocurrency scams, BBB warned. End quote. This is another instance where security awareness training is critical, but it also needs to be up to date with the latest tactics. Lisa Voss of ThreatPost shines a light on a recent vulnerability in the Zoho Manage Engine AD Self-Service Plus password manager that was being actively exploited until it was patched. Zoho is a popular small business CRM application with an ecosystem of plugins and integrations. This particular integration allows organizations to connect Zoho to their Microsoft Active Directory domain to make account management easier. The exploit allowed threat actors to gain almost unfettered access to victims' networks. The takeaway here is this. Each time you bring a new application or new system into your environment, you've given yourself a new responsibility to actively track new vulnerabilities and software updates to ensure you're not exposing your organization to an unknown vulnerability. Finally, bleepingcomputer.com reports that Microsoft OneDrive, the ubiquitous file sync and share app that Microsoft desperately wants everyone to use as their default storage location, will stop syncing to Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 8.1 devices in just over 3 months from now, on March 1st, 2022. If you're using OneDrive in your organization and you still have Windows 7 or 8 computers, you need to replace those machines right away or make other plans before sync is shut off. And that's your cybersecurity executive briefing for this week. Before we get into the Q&A section, I just want to mention that the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Remember that the stories presented are selected to be relevant to our audience, based on the technologies you've said you're using. If you are using other technologies in your organization and you'd like those covered, please let me know. If you're watching this after the fact and you want to be a part of the next live session, visit clocktowertech.com/cxb.html and register for the next call. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, letting us know what you learned or what could have been more clear. Until next time, stay safe, stay in touch. Together, we are secure.
Thank you.